Hey, so in this video, I want to just kind of respond to a couple comments that have been made in recent videos, people asking me to talk about certain things, and then close it with a little stuff more on the personal side of my life. So, thing number one to respond to would be okay, so there's a projection, I guess, that there's supposed to be like almost 100,000 overdose deaths in America in the most recent year. And I think like about 10 years ago, if we go back 10 years, the average was about 40 or 50,000 overdose deaths per year in America. So if you just multiply that out, like just say as a lower bound, 50,000 per year, and we do that over 10 years, that's 500,000 overdose deaths, half a million, again, as a lower bound. Um, and that's very similar to the amount of Americans who have died from COVID. Think what's the COVID numbers, probably up to like six or 700,000 at this point. And not to sound like cold or anything, but it's like a lot of the people who died from COVID were older people, whereas a lot of the people dying from overdoses were younger people. So it's almost like there's even more potential life lost because a lot of these young overdose victims never really had a chance to live a proper life. And and um, and obviously fentanyl is the culprit in a good proportion of this, and a good portion of this. So it's almost like all the fentanyl has been coming out of China over the past decade. I think some of it's being produced in Mexico now, but like at least the precursors still come out of China, and it's almost like chemical warfare in a sense. Like you could dress it up as something that would sound like chemical warfare. And it's just this silent topic because the amount of death from COVID is like national news and everything. And the overdose deaths is like, I don't think people know there's a lot of overdose deaths, but they don't know it's like one to one with the COVID deaths. Um, so yeah, like fentanyl obviously is the culprit, not just because it's tainted the heroin market and the pill markets and whatnot, but also like you get a lot of cases where like um, people are dying from fentanyl overdoses because they got tainted cocaine or they got tainted, you name it, like it's everywhere. Like this fentanyl's getting cut into everything, crack cocaine. um, it's almost like the joke, like like how the poppy pods and the kratom going to be tainted with fentanyl next. But yeah, so I think yes, obviously fentanyl is a huge culprit. I also think that you got a lot of people in the past year that if you're an addict and you're getting by day to day, maybe you're spending $50 a day, maybe you're spending $150 a day, but you got in the past 18 months or so, people got these bursts of money through the stimulus checks and the unemployment assistance and stuff. So it's almost like I think perhaps maybe there was more like overdose deaths due to a going crazy factor with more money than people were used to being making on a given day, week, whatever. And I think also just we're in this weird thing where it's like I was watching this video a couple months ago where they were interviewing drug addicts on the streets of, I think it was like Camden or somewhere in New Jersey. And the interviewer, one of the last questions the interviewer would ask would be, what would you tell to kids who are thinking about getting into drugs? And like all of the homeless drug addicts in the video just looked at the camera and said, I would tell those kids, don't do it. Just say no, it's not worth it. And it's almost like it just seems kind of helpless now because it's like we had the Nancy Reagan era just say no, and obviously that didn't work. And then you have addicts who, after they probably get into drugs because they didn't believe Nancy Reagan, now they're preaching the same line. I don't think this is the kind of thing that like there's just nothing you can say to young people to deter them. Um, so yeah, I think it's just under COVID and everything. Like I think a lot of people just felt very bored and restless, and I know alcohol sales like were through the roof under COVID. So I'm sure drugs followed in suit. Um, and just like I think in general, like there's this like I think like a lot of people would agree that like the West is on a decline, or even America's on a decline, or at least there wasn't that American hope that our parents' generations had. And I think a lot of people in this country just, yeah, I think Bernie Sanders actually was the one who called this the disease of despair. The drug addiction was a disease of despair. And I think like despair and hopelessness are at an all-time high point right now in this country. And um, I think a lot of people are just lost and confused, and um, and then couple that with the short attention span that people have. It's like drugs are like a quick reward or whatever. Um, Another question I was asked if I thought it was easier or harder getting clean this time. And I actually said it was easier. You know, you get in this weird thing where it's like, you get in this weird thing where obviously getting clean over and over across life, like in a way it makes it harder because you can get that feeling of like, oh my goodness, I can't do it. And you know, the whole line, like I've got one more relapse in me, but I don't have one more recovery. Like that bleak feeling of being like, here I am again in detox, no money, no job, and all of this stuff. So it's like, it can be like harder in a sense, but it can also be easier in the sense that like the more times you do this, the more you kind of know that like you that time is on your side, and that stuff like post withdrawal syndrome will fade with time, that you will get thing, you know, you kind of like done it. You know, if you did it once before, you can do it again. Kind of like if you know, built muscle on your body before, you kind of like can do it again a little bit easier next time. It's like there's like some type of recovery muscle memory that goes on, that it's almost like a formula. Like, okay, I'll just, you know, a formula to getting clean. And I honestly thought it was easier to get clean from fentanyl than heroin because I didn't think that the fentanyl withdrawals were as brutal psychologically. I mean, they were brutal physically, but I didn't think they were brutal psychologically. Um, So it was the last day of November in 2020. So like literally like a year and a day ago. And remember, it was the first snow slash ice storm we had here. And it was like ice coming down sideways. I remember being freaking soaked. You know, obviously I was homeless at the time, carrying all of my possessions on my back, figuratively and literally, I guess. Um, well, not figuratively, but yeah. So I remember it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had just like not hustled any money at all for the day. I had $16 on me, and if I showed up at my dealer's place with $16, it would be embarrassing. They were used to me spending a lot more than that, and it was just the weather conditions were horrible. I couldn't find any way to hustle any money, and about halfway through the day, and I went to bed the night before this having no idea that this would happen. I just kind of felt defeated, and I remember walking to a detox that I knew existed downtown, and just crossed my fingers and you know hoped that they were taking walk-ins, as we say, taking walk-ins without insurance, and they were. So I went into this detox facility, was in the detox facility for about a week, and then I transitioned onto a 30-day kind of like extent like in a 30-day like residential rehab type thing, but state funded and you know not anything hoity-toity or anything. Um, Odd, and then like it was kind of bad because as soon like 2 weeks into this residential, I ended up catching COVID in there. So then I had to go from the residential rehab program to a quarantine shelter at a hotel. And that was really hard because like it I hadn't gotten a phone back at that point yet. So I was in this hotel room. It was me and another person, and this other person happened to have like phone, money, people bringing him stuff, whereas I'm just like sitting there like an idiot for 2 weeks trying to entertain myself. I remember I had freaking I started writing by hand. I just had like a little notebook and stuff. I just started writing by hand, like fiction and philosophy and stuff, um, because like I never watched TV, so like sitting there on a hotel bed trying to watch TV and stuff like it was just so I got through those 2 weeks, and then I actually graduated and took myself and put myself into a sober living facility. And I stayed actually a good part of this year in that sober living facility, and it was actually a really good program, all things considered. Obviously there was stuff I didn't like about it, but there was a lot of the way that the program was designed, and kind of like the benefits and the perks that you could get by staying in the program really incentivized staying in the program. So, I got into that program. I started working 2 jobs and had a chance to save a little bit of money, um, and got out of it. So now I'm back on my own and whatnot. I could talk more about that in another video. Um, and oh, the comment about am I ever going to put Cambodia story part 3? And if you guys don't know what that means, I have a 3-part series. I've released the first and the second about being a down and out drug addict in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Yes, I will try and get the third one made. Though I'm gonna have to sit down and watch the first two and like really um, pick up where I left off because it's been a minute since I really thought about that topic. But yeah, I will get to that. And I kind of just want to close this video and just giving a bit more like personal stuff, like what do I do on a daily basis, like what's my life about, what do my days look like and whatnot. Why am I always so freaking exhausted? So as I said, like I have a full-time job and I have a part-time job, so I'm usually working like 60, 65 hours a week or so. I really like my full-time job. I like it a lot more than the full-time job I had before I relapsed. And it's in a industry that like I have never really worked in before, so it's kind of cool. Um, and the good thing about it, just the company that I'm with, it wouldn't be that hard to relocate if I do want to relocate with them. And the part-time job is just to supplement the income, but like so. What are like my short-term goals other than the kratom detox? The kratom detox, which starts tomorrow. Um, Other short-term goals. Well, this relates perfectly to Cambodia's story. So, when I came back to America from Cambodia, I had a hold on my passport because I had to get something called a repatriatization loan. It's basically if you don't have any money to return to America, you can get a loan from the State Department, and you just have to pay it back after a bit. And I've it's been like 8, 10 years or whatever. I just never paid the loan back. I mean, it's not a cheap not a cheap thing to pay back. Not super expensive, but definitely not cheap. And so I have to pay this loan off, and once the loan's paid off, then I can reapply for a passport. So actually, a couple weeks ago, entered into a payment program where I'm going to pay this thing off in 6 months. So it's pretty aggressive, and I'm going to have to live pretty tight for the next 6 months, but I'm going to get that completely paid off by like April or something of next year. So one of my goals is to get my passport back next year, and maybe by the end of 2022, um, take a trip to like Cambodia or not. I didn't mean to say Cambodia. I meant to say Thailand. Um, Maybe go to Thailand. Maybe go to Malaysia. Just somewhere in Southeast Asia, just for a week or so. Um, so that's a big goal for me. Other things that I do with my spare time, like I'm still very much into working out and eating healthy and whatnot. Um, I'm working out in the mornings now these days. I've never been one to work out in the mornings, but now I'm working out in the mornings. I've become a convert to the morning workout routines, and I love it. Um, so yeah, still doing that. Not training quite as heavy and whatnot as I used to, just because like I got to be more keen to injury awareness and stuff as I get older. But yeah, that's very good for my mental health. Another topic that I'm getting into a lot right now is I'm really like, and I've known a little bit about it over the past couple of years, but like I'm sitting down and really, really, really teaching myself everything about like the cryptocurrency game, because I think it's a skill that will come in. That it's just good to get ahead of this thing. I think, yeah. So I'm doing a lot of studying of cryptocurrency and whatnot. And I also, like, I do know a fair bit about foreign exchange, Forex markets, trading Forex. And so for now, like, I'm sitting down and, like, just drafting up and practicing various trading strategies and just getting a feel for different platforms and whatnot, so that once I do, and demo trading, trading with play money, doing this, and then like once I get that loan paid off by the middle of next year, then I'm going to start putting a little bit of my income into forex and crypto, and trying to, with discipline and everything, get my feet wet. Um, and then, but ultimately, like my 3 to 5 year goal, which is really, really what I want to do with my life, I do want to go back to grad school and hopefully pursue a doctorate. Um, to those who don't know, I actually got a master's when I was only like, I had just turned 23 when I got my master's, so I have a bachelor and a master's degree both in mathematics. Um, so, um, but no, I've talked about this in videos. Like I was way too young and stupid to appreciate, what higher education was at that point. Um, so college and grad school was just coasting through on book smarts, how to be average, and just doing as much alcohol and drugs as I could. But no, I want to go back to grad school. And honestly, like my biggest passion isn't lifting, isn't crypto, isn't anything like that. My biggest passion, um, in life is I've over the past like couple of years I've developed an obsession with astronomy, astrophysics, and cosmology, kind of, and particle physics, just kind of like that whole arc of topics. Like I'm a freaking huge nerd. Like this getting clean this year, like in those first couple months, they'd always be like, "Why are you isolating, man? Why are you isolating?" And I'm sitting there on my phone, watching physics lectures or um, reading, astronomy textbooks and whatnot. And so, yeah, like I want to go to grad school and I would love to pursue a doctorate in either astronomy or astrophysics or something very close to those, because yeah, I find it to be the most fascinating topic in the world, and I would love to get into that industry. It could be, even if it's like, working for a telescope, and or it could be working as a theorist in junction with people working in the field. It could even be going into like aerospace or something. I don't know, but like that's kind of really what I would like to do. Obviously, it's going to be difficult because, um, I have tons of student loans already. I don't have good credit. I don't necessarily have anyone to write me letters of recommendation, so it's going to be um, difficult getting into it. But I know that I'm ready for it, and I know that I can handle it if I got in. Um, and yeah, that's like it's something that I keep very personal because there's almost like a spiritual component to it. Like, some people turn to religion to answer the biggest questions: why are we here, what's the point of this? Some people get into philosophy. The way that I interpret those questions, like I love to interpret them in like the astronomy and cosmology, through the astronomy and cosmology lens. So it's like a very spiritual thing in a way, learning about these topics. And um and especially like I'm a freaking math geek. Like who who sits there and watches math or physics lectures on a Friday night for fun? um but yeah, so I can't wait. It's going to be very difficult to figure out how I'm going to pull that off, but you know me, I like difficult things.